what Reich found was that if you took long metal tubes, hollow metal tubes, and you hooked the bottom end of them into water through flexible hollow metal cables, that this would affect the atmosphere. And the first thing he noticed was that it would, that if you pointed such a device at clouds, that the clouds would break up. And over months of further research, he discovered that by shifting and manipulating the energy potentials in the atmosphere with these tubes, that he could also find a way to create rain, bring up winds, eliminate fogs, and so on. Anything that had to do with weather changes in the atmosphere. Now, the way it worked, he found, was that it seemed to draw energy from that region of the sky where you point the tubes. And when that happens, the energy moves from clouds to, from the clouds, and the moisture which was held by the energy just drops away. And so the cloud will disintegrate. And if you want to build clouds, you aim your cloudbuster, which is what he called it, at a point away from the clouds, and the cloud, by virtue of the fact that it now has a higher energy potential, will increase its charge. And due to what Reich called the ergonomic potential, what Ulysse would call a syntropic potential, the clouds will form and grow to proportions where you can build enormous thunderstorms. And I've been working with that device, which Dominique and I call the Atmospheric Energy Device, or AEED, Atmospheric Energy Engineering Device. I've been working with it personally for close to 50 years, and in the United States and abroad. And what we did, because we wanted to do some more research on this, because we wanted to have a weather control station in Colorado because of drought in that region and further east, we decided to set up a device, build one, and operate it. And what we're going to show you here is a result of a couple of sessions of working with the AEED. And we will call it that sometimes. Sometimes we'll call it the cloudbuster, as Reich called it. Now, Dominique, you want to describe what radiesthesia at this point? Okay. Well, it occurred to me, knowing that Dominique is a superb radiesthesia, I'll never pronounce it right. Yeah. She works with a pendulum, as she'll tell you, and she's extremely sensitive, and we've done other kinds of little experiments before. But as long as we were going to set this device up here, we thought, well, this would be an excellent time to get further information about what's going on with it. Because there's really no way of quantifying the changes that took place in and around the device itself to that point. So when we were in the process of putting this together, one of our crew, the guy who's head of our crew, Phil Catalano, built one at my request in his place in Colorado. And just to test it out, he constructed it, and he had a pool by his house. So he put the lower ends of the pipes by the cables, via the cables, into this pool, and pointed it up at the sky to see what he could see. So when we came by to check it out, I noticed, went down to the device, which looks like this, which was lying beside this pool. And I felt sick. And this was a reaction which I had noticed before in certain situations in working with this device and orgone energy accumulators. Some kinds of accumulators built and functioning in certain situations. So I moved away from the device. By sick I meant I felt nauseated. And I could feel like intense sensations on my skin. And I'm very sensitive to this stuff, having worked with it for 50 years. So I asked Dominique to scan it with a pendulum. And she got some extremely unusual reactions. And she too began to feel ill. So we moved away from that locale and came back the next day, and we were going to do further experiments. And by then Phil had taken the cables and the device, the tubes, up to a driveway which led out to the road in preparation for loading all this stuff on the truck. And I got near those cables and I got sick again. And when Dominique went to scan them with a pendulum, she got extremely intense reactions. So it was evident that whatever was taking place had lasted through the day, and we wanted to know more about what was taking place. And I think that at this moment, Dominique will tell you about the discipline of radiesthesia and how we use it in this work. Do you want to sit here in front of us?
Before I start explaining what Radiesthesia is, or Radiesthesia in American, I want to explain to you why we used it and how we used it. As Dick explained, okay, we had the
microphone.
So, as you can see, this is the so this is the cloudbuster, and if you notice here, there are stakes planted in the ground here, 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 and here. And later we'll show you a video of exactly what we did. But my purpose was to use radiesthesia and walk into the field. I assumed that that apparatus was giving out a field of energy, because we all got sick when we got close to it. And what I wanted to do is to see how far out this energy field came, and if it had a shape, if it had a contour. So I used my pendulum to walk into the edge of the energy field. And when we did, and I started feeling the edge of the energy field, we planted a stake, okay? And then we came up with a pattern. Now you have to remember that this was the very first time that we did this, and so we're learning, from our mistakes we have to be more precise, etc. But before we go on and tell you what we did, I think it's important that you understand what radiesthesia is. Okay, so we call it the ancient science of micro-vibrational physics. Okay, it has to do with the fact that everything vibrates. It's an ancient but also a sacred science. It was developed in secret over thousands and thousands of years in China, Egypt, and Europe. And the science of radiesthesia was kept from the general population. It was believed that if you train your body in order to use the skills of radiesthesia, it develops your sensitivities to such a point that it actually opens the portal to the cosmos or to the divine. And therefore, it was not taught to the general population. It goes way back to about 3000 BC. Even the Chinese were using the bakwa, which receives and emits. So this is, you all know what it is anyhow. And it receives and emits, and it's supposed to cover all of the vibrations in the universe if you know how to use it, which means if you know how to tune into it with your body. It was used, one of the applications was for medical healing, and by placing a witness in the middle, and a witness means a piece of hair, a piece of nail of the person, so that the vibrational imprint of that person would be there, and then you could work with it. In Radiesthesia, we say that everything vibrates and emits a unique energetic pattern. Think of your thumb imprint. Think of how many people on this planet there are, and we each have a unique thumb imprint. That's pretty mind-boggling. Well, our field of energy is also unique to you and you and you, which is why when we work with photos or with the names, if we can tune in to that field, if we can look at the thumbprint, then we have a lot of information. No one knows for sure. The story is that the Chinese did use a pendulum when working with this, but there's nothing in writing because it, like I said, it's a sacred science. And it was only passed on from one priest to the other, very high-level people. And there is evidence that, the people who tried to share the information with the general population just, that was it. That was the last time they were going to speak. So, radiesthesia. Where does it come from? It comes from the Latin radius, which means radiations, and the Greek aesthesis, which means sensation. So it's a combination of using your sensations to capture the signals of radiation. And what do we use? We use a pendulum. What are the applications? Okay, well, it's, your imagination is the limit. But we use it to access. We use it to access non-local information. We use it to transmit remotely at a distance, messages, information, healing, okay? We use it to charge and recharge energetically, or we also learn that shapes and forms and volumes have specific energy fields that can, for example, amplify. And we use it to detect things, to locate or to make medical diagnoses. The main principle is that everything radiates energy waves. In French, we call them ondes de forme, which I translate into form waves. Anything, whether it's organic, live, inorganic, inert, shapes on papers, or volumes of shapes, give out a specific field and have a very defined force. And the other major principle is that the human body is both an emitter, we emit, but we can also receive. It's as if, we were born on this planet with this magnificent instrument that we learned, how to use part of it thousands and thousands of years ago. Then we evolved into the technology and we forgot that part. Not only did we forget it, but most of the mainstream people believe we don't even have that skill, as you know. So, we use our body and our vibrational field as an instrument to enter into resonance with other energy fields, whether they're alive or not. Think of an oscilloscope, okay? The pendulum will act as the indicator right here, okay? The pendulum has to be neutral, and it is just like the indicator of any type of instrument. And the skill transcends time, space, and events, because we are working on the other side of what we call the other side of the material physics. of the visible world. We work in the invisible side of science. In radiesthesia, so we don't have much time here. This is not a lecture about radiesthesia because there's so much to say. So I'm just going to focus on the elements that pertain to the experiments that we did with the cloudbuster. So in general, in radiesthesia, there are two sorts of waves, what that we call electric and magnetic. Most electric waves are harmful. Most magnetic waves are beneficial. The electric waves discharge and drain living cells, so they can kill living cells. Therefore, that's why you say avoid synthetic fibers, in your clothes or plastic furniture, because they emit negative electric green at very low levels, but still they do, which is harmful to living organisms. Okay. On the other hand, magnetic charges activate leukocytes, which can decrease even a cancer tumor. In olden days, people used to take magnetic baths for curative purposes because it actually revives organic cells. Okay, so there are both healing and harmful rays, and everything gives out one or the other. Now, this concept has been known and used back to the megalithic times. The Babylonians, the Egyptians were masters at it, the Indians as well as the Aztecs and the American Indians. Pyramids, Stonehenge, sacred geometry and all that are part of it. Also, just so that you know, in general, as it pertains to what we're going to talk about later, there are two categories of rays. There are the planetary rays that come from our planet Earth, but we're also affected from the cosmic rays. And not many people realize that. So when they do healing or adjustments and all that, some people take only into consideration the planetary rays, but that's a big mistake because we have to be very well balanced and know all about the cosmic rays too. And the human body needs both in a certain balance to keep healthy. Okay, so for example, triangular shape is said to harness the Earth's energy. People praying with fingers joined like this, they're harnessing the Earth's energy into their hands. If they pray like this, they're trying to get the cosmic energy into their body. That's just one of many examples. Radiesthesia is also, I mentioned briefly a little while ago, based on the Hermetic principle that what is above is below and what is below is above. Modern day science, we focus on the material plane, what is visible. Radiesthesia takes into consideration the other side, or what is above, okay, that is considered invisible. But that's what modern science says, because most people can't really see it or feel it because they're not trained to do it. The knowledge of the pendulum was passed on, like I said, only from one pharaoh to another, or a high priest to another high priest. The rods how to use rods were taught to the general population because the leaders wanted water, they needed minerals, they needed all these things that come from the earth. So they used, and you've all, I'm sure, used rods and you just pick them up and it just works. It's very easy. But the pendulum, okay, was very, very sacred. So non-local information we receive or measure, like I said a little while ago, they come in the forms of radiations or imprints, just our human imprint of our human energy. And the range of work that you can do in radiesthesia is from cellular to cosmos, from physical to mental. You can measure speed, direction, anything that you want, okay? It's just a tool. And then your intention and your, the application is up to you to figure out. So we fast forward to modern times, and in 1939, the use of radiesthesia came through in the medical profession in France, specifically by Dr. Discret, who attended the French National Physicians Congress and presented his method of using radiesthesia as a diagnostic and prescription tool. So what you do is they had these, this is not very clear, but it's a measure like a ruler, okay, and you use the pendulum and you ask, you know, the ruler represents healthy, not healthy, or whatever disease you want to analyze. And with the pendulum, it can tell you at which intensity the disease, you know, the disease is at, okay. As you can guess, most of these doctors who try to be public with this were fired and, you know, from the Board of Medicine. Here's another, this is a very famous one, a ruler that we still use today. It's called a biomètre de Bovis, which means that if you are a healthy human being, you will vibrate at this 7,500 angstroms. If you look to the left of it, okay, we have cancer, we have tuberculosis, for example, with all the other diseases, okay? So one way of determining whether someone has cancer or not, you can use this ruler and see at what level this person's energy is vibrating at. And if he's vibrating at that level, you go further and investigate whether or not that person has cancer. Anything that way is very healthy. We also use this ruler to see, to measure organic food, because you are what you eat. So if you eat food that is very low in vibration, then your whole body is going to lower itself and you're going to enter the zone of diseases. So what you do is you put the food right here, and then with intention, and you follow the protocol. You don't just, by the way, pick up a pendulum and it starts moving and you get a reading. There's a very definite protocol to get accurate information. So you can measure the piece of food, and if it's down here, it's not really organic. What you want it is up here, where you need to keep your vibrational field at to be healthy. So that's just an example of one of the applications. So just to let you know, there's been some modern research conducted at fairly high levels, for example, at the École Normale Sup of Paris from Dr. Surel and Rocard. Rocard was the director of the physics lab. And he said that each type of thought produces a specific type of movement. You use the unconscious to capture the information, and without the unconscious, radiesthesia does not exist. So learning, training, how to use the pendulum is developing your unconscious. And you'll see in my next lecture tomorrow when I talk about controlled remote viewing, it's all about developing your unconscious. So the ancients already knew that way back then, and we're just rediscovering it. And we still, you know, have a difficult time with the mainstream. If any of you read French and you're interested in this, Dr. Etienne Guillet published a book. He's in physiobiochemistry at the University of Paris. He published 2 books, okay, on the vibrational language of life, and he did DNA research using radiesthesia. Okay, so if you're interested, but it's only, unfortunately, it's only published in French. Okay, I'm going to focus on 2 major researchers who revived the science of radiesthesia. They were an engineer, de Bilizal, and a physician, Chaumery, in the 1940s. They were also archaeologists, and they went into the Egyptian pyramids and did research and discovered the Egyptian pendulum. And they realized that the pendulum itself, the shape and the way it's built, emits a type of energy that has carrier wave properties, like Hertz waves that carry sound across great distances. So they spent most of their lives doing extensive experimentation, and they gave it the name micro-vibrational physics, okay? They discovered, oh yes, so when they visited the tombs of the Egyptians and the pyramids, they discovered there were like some sorts of what appeared to be pieces of furniture or objects made of wood of certain shapes and placed in strange areas. So they studied that and realized that these objects actually had a purpose in managing the energy waves in that room. Some of them amplified it, and I'm going to talk about this just now. So what they did is they replicated these pieces of objects or furniture in their labs for research. And these are some photos of how they were conducting research in their labs. You'll see these like half circles and all that. These are amplifiers of subtle energy, and they discovered it in the Egyptian tombs. The Egyptians used those forms to amplify. I think you've all seen this piece of furniture in the museums that were found in the Egyptian tombs. Well, that one actually had a purpose too. They would place the semi-globes on that, and this shape here, okay, actually emits a certain energy field on its own. So everything, the way it's positioned, the way the dimensions and all that have a purpose. Here's another photo of their experiments. So I'm going to talk right now about one ray, which is called electric negative green, because this is what we found doing our experiments on the cloudbuster. The electric, so first of all, it's electric, so you know it's not good for living cells, okay? It emits a harmful ray, but it also, in its transit, will pick up other harmful rays with which it resonates and transport them. Okay? Negative electric green is a carrier for other harmful rays. When it travels in the soil, it will pick up other negative rays on its way. For example, you take a piece of meat and you place it, you take a pyramid and you place it 2/3 up on a pyramid. That level right there of a pyramid of specific dimensions, okay, generates negative electric green. So if you put a little platform there with a piece of meat, okay, it will mummify. It will dry out very quickly. And these are experiments that have been repeated over and over again. And the Chinese knew about this. They never built important buildings without looking into the dragon's vein, which, when tested with radiesthesia, emitted negative electric green rays. So Léon Chaumery and de Bilizard were just fascinated by all this. And here's something happened to my slide. Okay, they measured negative electric green, and they found out it was the shortest and strongest of all waves. Its power is greater than X-rays. It's a type of radioactive ray which covers a spectrum from infrared to ultraviolet. Okay. And then they went on and gave more specifics. Now, what's interesting is that the Egyptians used negative electric green to mummify their dead. And some medical labs in Czechoslovakia and Russia use negative electric green to kill insects and worms for lab experiments, because it destroys microorganisms and it's very effective in the early stages of cancer tumors. So if you use negative electric green and focus on early cancer tumor, apparently it can stop its progress. Egyptians were very advanced in mathematics and physics, and they were masters about harmful ways and knew how to create contained areas which would emit a harmful wave. So you've heard of some of the archaeologists that went into, into these tombs, and they were told the story, everybody knew you shouldn't go in that tomb, but they went anyhow. And they died quick or very strange types of deaths, and it is attributed to the fact it's now been proven that some of these tombs and rooms will emit that negative electric green, which kills living organisms. So it's interesting because they found that the mummies, the body offered an axis whereby a ray passes through it into two perpendicular planes, and not only triggers the mummification process, but also turns the body into an emitter of that wavelength. So what they did sometimes is they would insert a powerful poison into that center of the body, near the solar plexus, and then the mummified body was transformed into an emitter of that poison, and it would emit it as a ray. So they did this to protect the tombs from intruders. And as I said earlier, there were other motifs and shapes that were added that would also emit poisonous wavelengths. So research has been done on mummies that emit this. Okay, I'm sort of repeating here. Yeah, the mummy itself and the shape. Also, they were placed at specific places inside the pyramid because, of course, the pyramid itself is a powerful emitter. So you have to know what you're doing here. And they were masters at this. Okay, long story short, poor Chaumery, after doing all of these fascinating experiments on negative electric green, died from it. He exposed himself, he didn't realize how powerful this really was, and died suddenly. And apparently, when they looked at his body from what he died from, he was totally dehydrated and all his cells were dried out. Typical from negative electric green. So, just briefly, something about the pendulum itself. You need to know, if you're interested in this, that the shape, the size, and the material of the pendulum is extremely important, okay? It's not a nice piece of, jewelry, or it has a specific shape. The most neutral material is wood or brass, which is recommended for beginners but intermediate users too. Glass is a second choice, but crystal is a big no-no to use as a pendulum. Does anybody know why? Because a crystal is an instrument in itself, okay? It stores data. Okay, my father, I remember when I was a child, the first crystal I saw was actually from my father, who never knew I got into this because he was so, he was an engineer and I couldn't tell him I got into this, but he brought home a crystal. That was the first crystal I saw from his lab. And I said, Papa, what's that? He said, well, it's used in, in engineering instruments to store, for communication and all that. So you do not want to use crystal as a pendulum. The pendulums must be well balanced, and they should be conical or spherical, so as to not distort energy waves. You do not want to have angles. Okay, here's, the one on the left is the best one to use. The more angles you have, the more deflection and reception that you have. So use the one on the left, which is just beautifully, neutral. Here's the shape of the pharaoh's pendulum that they discovered in the pharaoh's tomb. This is the pendulum that I use to identify the energy field from the cloudbuster. Here's how it works. It's called a color pendulum, and this here, you can move down or you can move up. There's a little clip, okay? And with your intention, okay, for example, if I want to know if I'm in a field that is electric yellow, then I will move it down here because this is the electric, okay? And I will move this here. And again, the dimensions, it's all calibrated to capture exactly that frequency. Okay? And then you also use intention. So that's the pendulum I used. I put it on negative electric green to see if it resonated with that ray, and you will see on the video what the pendulum did. So for some of you, if some of you have never used the pendulum or wonder what I'm talking about, how do you feel or whatever, just imagine two magnets, two north poles, okay? You try to put them together. Okay, it's really hard, there's some resistance. You can't see the field, okay? But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's what we're talking about these energy fields, okay? Just because we can't see them doesn't mean they don't exist. So what happens is when you take your pendulum with the intention of entering or identifying the edge or the outskirt of an energy field, once you start hitting it, the pendulum will begin to move. And it feels like, just like you're trying to put two north ends or two south ends. You'll really feel that resistance. As a matter of fact, if you feel like having fun, you can rub your hands like this, which activates all of your energy field, and then with another person or yourself, you can with intention say, I would like to feel the edge of my energy field. Now, some of you will feel resistance, some of you will feel tingling, some of you will feel something else, okay? We all react differently, but if you train yourself, you will begin to feel the edge. So, okay, and this is just a sense of humor, okay? In France and in Belgium, I don't know if you know Tintin, okay, The Adventures of Tintin. We grow up with the pendulum because this is part of our culture. I don't know one French kid or Belgian kid who doesn't have the whole collection of Tintin by the time they're 8 years old. And there's Professor Tournesol, and he's always walking around with his pendulum. So in some cultures, radiesthesia is, very much accepted. And so that's it. Yeah, I see that radiesthesia. Radiesthesia also covers some of the alchemical principles. As a matter of fact, they're, part of each other. And today, when you read about quantum physics and what we're discovering, we're rediscovering through another door exactly what the ancients knew. So, okay.
Well, we see if it starts by itself or otherwise.
So this is a film that was made by a friend of ours who's an expert in media, and she filmed our last operation in Colorado, which was in, what was that, in June? It was in June.
Yes, it was in June.
See if we look at the computer.
If we get it rolling, what you'll see is the energy device being built, put together, and being trained on the atmosphere, and you'll see changes in cloud formation there. And then Dominique will begin her radiesthetic estimations of the energy field of this device. And finally, there's a drawing of the result of the work.
I don't know about our here talking about it.
There are two of them. There are two films.
In terms of the general energy in this area. So as in radiesthesia, we use a sort of a ruler, 1 to 10, and I'm going to therefore measure all around this stake so that later we can come back and see if there's a difference. So,
These are
I'm waiting for the pendulum to calibrate into this general area.
Unfortunately, they were screwed up
And then I'm going to use a scale of 1 to 10,
because the coils
just
which we
as
had used
a
before
general
were literally
generic
placed near the area where
tool
we're
of
going to work.
measurement. Once the pendulum is fully tuned into this energy field, which I'm doing by using intention, it will stop. So I'm just waiting for it. I'm just walking around, and it takes its time. So I'm going to go around this stake, and then I'll do the same thing. It's speeding up, which for me means that it's done scanning. I am now going to take my, what I call my ruler of a scale of 1 to 10. And here I'm telling the pendulum to scan the ruler 1 to 10. If you want to see it, it's just a, handmade ruler. Now I'm going to ask it, in this field of energy, on a scale of 1 to 10, how highly is it vibrating? So I start at 0. Is it 0? It's telling me to move to the right. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Oh, it's slowing down. 6, 8. At 8, it's pausing and telling me to go back. So is it 7? Is it 6? Is it 5? At 4, it's slowing down, telling me to reverse. Is it 5? It's speeding up at 5. I ask the question again, is it 5? And for me, that is a definite yes. So I'm not surprised that it's on 5. It means that with what I had in my intention, in my mind, on a scale of 0 to 10, or 1 to 10, it's charged but neutral and sort of balanced or normal, okay? So we'll remember that before we set up, it was on 5. Okay, so what we're going to do now is redo the measurement without the cables that were here a little while ago. They were too close, and therefore they were emitting a specific energy which we don't want to measure right now because we're establishing the baseline. So let me start again and go back into this area of measuring, and it all works with intention. So I'm measuring this field of energy that's around this orange stake. And I put my left hand out to capture as much of the vibrations as I can that is then transferred through my body and then measured by the pendulum. So, okay, my pendulum is accelerating, which means that it's almost done scanning. Okay, there's a big difference now in the energy field than a little while ago. I don't know if you remember how much more slowly it was turning. Right now, it's very, very strong. So I'm going to stop it because I want to measure. I'm taking, again, the same ruler of 0 to 10, and I'm asking the pendulum with my intention, indicate to me the measurement of, on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong this energy field is. So I'm pushing it to 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, it's making me go back. 6, back. 5, back. 4, back. 3, 2. Okay. Let me start again. Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? On a scale of 1 to 10? Is it 4? Okay, it's pushing me back. And is it 3? And this for me is a yes answer. So on a scale of actually 0, 1, 2, 3 to 10, it is now on level 3.
We use that as our baseline.
So we just established a measurement or a type of baseline at the orange stake, and now I'm moving, I don't know how many feet away from the stake. Dick, how many feet am I away from the stake? 12, about 12 feet. And just to establish another sort of baseline 12 feet away from that stake. So I'm just repeating the same steps and trying to calibrate into this energy field here.
We wanted a zero field in which to do the operation.
Okay. As you can tell, it's moving very, very fast. Okay, I don't see any differences around here, so let me measure it again using the same ruler. And on a scale of 0 to 10, where does this field measure? 3, 4, 5. It's sending me back. 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2.5, 3, 4, 3.
We were faced with the problem of these coils, which had caused us to feel sick when we first approached them, and in which we got negative reaction before we even started this. Unwittingly, when we started scanning for a baseline place in which to do the operation, our team brought those coils down right near where we were originally scanning. And so we had to move them away, and we got less of a reaction, but still more of a reaction than I was happy with. And that indicated to me that those coils had actually contaminated the area, and it lasted. It had a duration. This is not an unusual phenomenon in working with these energy systems. I've seen it many times. So then I asked Dominique to move back about, 12 feet and scan again, further away from where we had the coils. And this time we got a baseline which was satisfactory for us to begin the work.
And this next part here is, if you can tell, I switched pendulums. I'm now using the color one. And this time I was walking into, we had staked the form of the energy field that was being emitted by the cloudbuster. And now, I think this is the part where I wanted to see, well, what is it emitting? And because we were getting sick, I placed the colored pendulum in negative electric green to see. Oh, I did that on the start.
Yeah, to ask you which
Yeah, but I also did it.
did it later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but we did it on the coils first, and boy, there was a huge, huge positive reaction. But then as I moved into the field of the cloudbuster itself, I detected negative electric green also. So, I don't want to bore you with too much of this stuff.
It produce negative electric green, you can put a piece of meat in it and it will mummify within a very short time. So what I'm doing now is I have the special pendulum that measures magnetic on top and electric on the bottom, and I have it on the frequency of negative electric green, so that if I encounter that field, the pendulum will respond. So, here I go. Okay, so right here, I'll move back a little bit.
Can you stop it for a second?
Now, my question is, so we get the right...
This work is of significance from several points of view. One, it is the first measurement, so to speak, of the fields surrounding a cloudbuster device. And the second, it's not just a measure of quantity or extent of the field, but of the quality of it. When you're measuring, as Dominique picks up negative electric green, that's probably identical to what Reich called either or deadly orbital radiation. And those things have never been able to be measured in terms of their quality before. We knew about them because of the sensations that they produce in our body when we were working. So, to my mind, this work opens up this field in a way that had never been seen before, because it opens it up to quantitative and qualitative measurement. And in the development of science, that's always been extremely important. Okay.
Answer, is there negative electric here? No. No. Okay. Is there negative electric green? Is there? Now, as you can see, it is going back and forth. For me, that is an indication the pendulum wants me to move in that direction. Because of my intention, it's telling me there's something coming up. So I follow, and it's getting agitated. It's getting very agitated, okay? So I ask the question clearly, is there negative electric green here? Okay, that is a very powerful yes, because it's actually swinging vertically, which means that it's extremely loaded, and it is on negative electric. Let's see how far back it goes. Okay, it's slowing down. It's slowing down. But there's more here. There's more here.
Literally working, will be attracted to that area. There are two films here. Go back and look. This is back here. Well, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
That's all right.
All of a sudden, the second film appeared.
Well, we
I
can
didn't
move to
even.
that.
Yeah.
We could already move to that.
Sure.
Now, I just wanted to point out that Dominique was within a few feet of all those coils. I didn't know if you saw them, but they were sickening. And now, at this point, we're building the cloudbuster, putting it together.
Whoops. Sorry. I wanted to fast forward. Never let me
All right, part two.
do this again.
This is part two.
Yeah, do you want part two?
No, you're in there. It's all
You
right.
want it?
That's fine. This is the sky when we first started.
I don't know what
I'm going to talk a little bit about it. The fellow on the left, Phil Catalano, is our crew chief. So we're pointing the cloudbuster in approximately this area. Now these are all preliminary tests to test the device and to see what is the quality of energetic reaction. We haven't done any weather making operations here. We're pointing it out more or less in this area. If I recall correctly, cloud disintegration began to take place here.
Yeah. But you could actually see very slowly the white cloud just moving.
And you'll see like circular holes are produced, and a vortical action begins to take place in the clouds, and they disappear at one end of the vortex. Why don't we have any sound?
Because I turned it off.
Good reason.
Yeah. Do you want to watch?
Yeah. I want them to see this.
And work my way up to the tube aimed at the clouds, and we'll see if there's any difference.
You see
So
these cables go into the water, and they go to the other end.
I now have
of
the
device.
pendulum over the water, but over the tubes, the coils that are in the water. And my intention is to follow this activity field all the way up to the solid tubes ahead. So I'm over the water, and my pendulum is very, very active, very strong. As a matter of fact, I have to let more string down because I can't hold it. I'm going up the coils, as you can see. Okay, I detect a slight increase. There's a slight increase. Oh, right here, the increase is a lot more. And actually, I can feel it with my hand. It seems as if, like every 12 inches or so, it almost exponentially, the energy exponentially rises or gets more powerful. And now I'm doing all I can to hold on to my pendulum. I almost lost it there. We're going towards the, okay, it's so strong. It is now, okay, if you can see it, it is now revolving vertically like a Ferris wheel. That means that the energy and the power is so strong that it can't continue on its usual course. And my fingers are hurting from trying to hold on to it. So, and I need to get away from it. It starts off with very high energy in the water, and as you go up, it seems that it increases almost exponentially until it goes at the bottom of the tubes, and it really almost like explodes.
Okay. This is Phil Catalano, and I'm looking at the pipes as the way they are aiming towards the clouds, and what we're seeing is a separation as if the clouds are separating from a single point away from a center point. If it were wind, it would be moving the clouds together in the same direction. But since they are dispersing away from a center point or central hole area, it's something more than just wind affecting. It could be affecting one layer or another, but not both the way we're seeing it.
That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
You write in your paper that the electric green is similar to the ultra low frequency, ultra or extremely low frequencies. Did you check this assumption by dosing in presence of ultra low frequency, known ultra low frequencies?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question at the beginning.
You write in your paper, in your article, that the electric green is similar to the ultra low frequency, or said also known extremely low frequency.
Yes.
Did you check this assumption with dosing, with a scan?
No, this comes from research that was done by Chemery and de Bilizalit. It's
okay.
not me. Yes, I have not checked their work. No. Yeah. Any other? Yes.
These fields, are they electric? Really, they are not non-physical. They are electric, physical electric fields.
Okay, you're asking what the negative electric green?
What kind of energy? Is it really electric energy?
You know, if you read the research, some say yes, some say no.
You must, because of the nomenclature, there's often confusion between what the Egyptians and the Radiesthesias describe as electric and magnetic, confusion with contemporary terms of magnetic and electric. They are not the same as far as we know. They function in different realms, and if there is a correspondence between them, that would be extremely interesting, and it would be something that we want to find out. As a matter of fact, one of the goals of our research is to find a way to translate the kinds of things that Dominique is picking up into contemporary terms and contemporary physics, bearing in mind that these are different realms of functioning. But if we could ever make that transition, it would be a tremendous discovery.
Yes?
Yes, one question. I can ask you if this energy that you have showed through pendulum can be used practically to producing some devices that can use this energy for some practical use.
Now you're getting into the realm of radionics, okay? That are machines that are trying to do that. I'm not too much up to date on the latest radionic machines. I know there are some that claim to do that. You have to be very careful about, you know, how can a machine reproduce something that is not in the material realm? You just have to be very, very careful. I'm not saying it can't be done, but yeah, and I don't know, there are new machines coming out almost every day trying to...
So this research is continuing
Yes.
in this way? Yes?
Oh yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Those are the ones that I've had experience with involve a coupling of the human operator with the machine. I have never seen one that just works totally independent of a human intention.
Yeah. And that's why there's no straight answer, because it's very complex, and it could be the subject of another 3-hour lecture, because it is fascinating. The power of intention, the power of, developing our sensitivity so that we can feel what we're doing. I mean, all that, is quite complex.
But you said that such form of energies were used in ancient
Yes.
civilization, like Egypt,
Yes.
China, and
Yeah, and what they did is they used certain shapes, okay, and put them in certain places, and it's believed that that was reinforced with intention. The power of word, the power of sound, or whatever, it is. And that's how they managed these subtle
And
energies.
some other question is what types or what kinds of information can you transmit through distance? Yes,
Yes.
just directly. What kind of information?
Right, in my own very limited experience, okay, anything,
Anything.
yes.
You can see anything. What is?
That's why this science was not revealed to the masses. And still today, okay, most of the books on this are written in French and they're not really translated. All the best books are still in French. I think in my paper I give references. They're the best references if you're interested.
It is very interesting for me. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can always email me once you read these books if you have questions, because I have other books that you can also read. But that's why it was called the sacred science. Because imagine if everybody is doing this. And the point is, okay, it really now today, the information is out there. And unfortunately, in my view, in terms of ethics and all that, there are more people who know about it that shouldn't than the others that do, which is why, I also teach it. And I had a very, serious ethical issue in my mind. Should I teach this or not? And for many years I didn't. I refused. And then I saw that what's going on in the world, and I said, the wrong people have the knowledge. And so I don't believe that we're going to raise the human consciousness or evolve the human race by fighting. We've been fighting for millions of years. It doesn't work. We're still fighting today. So I think what we need to do is give the tools to those who are already more evolved, and let's us use it for the right reason.
Yes, I'm trying to do it at the philosophical and physical level.
Yes.
To find the solution for this phenomenon.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's by building those who are already a little bit more evolved so that we outnumber, in very basic terms, the other ones. And the other ones already have this information. So.
Thank you very much.
There were questions, yes?
Maybe a strange question, but because you've experienced this and have a sense, do you find your inner souls are more lively?
Lively is an interesting word. It is definitely a transformational experience. Yes, absolutely. From my, humble experience, for me, what it did is I come from a totally atheist family. My parents never knew I'm into this. I could never tell them. They thought I was crazy to begin with, so I didn't want to be locked up. So I believed in nothing. And when I experienced all these things, for me, it just opened a connection to out there, which, I don't know what it is, but I'm feeling all of these things that are in the invisible world. And I'm just taking a little peek, and there's so much out there. So that's the only way I can answer that question.
Beautiful, thanks.
There was another question from the back.